And by the way, my name is Noel Reynolds. I'm the Director of Solution Architects at BlueCat, and I run the team of SAs that helps our customers when we're talking to them, normally in a pre-sales environment, but we certainly do post-sales support as well. So, if we've seen anything in the last, I'd say, 5 to 10 years, it's that cloud is a real thing. It's being rapidly adopted, and it has changed the way everything is happening, right? And I think the number one change that we've seen is the on-premises systems. VMware NSX, I saw a sticker on one of your laptops. That's a good example of, we're seeing that the on-premises systems are now being delivered in a manner that can be interacted with just as they can interact with cloud. They're used to being able to do things via API, via scripting, and tying it into all their automation systems. So cloud, if nothing else, has really made customer demand for those types of access, those types of services, part of everything that they're doing across the board. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. So, but obviously the problem with that, and one of them that you were just talking about is, if you give someone API access, they're going to use it. And if there's no controls around that, you're going to find yourselves in trouble very quickly. So we've seen things like network conflicts, explosion of infrastructure, inconsistent security postures. And then, of course, the other aspect of it is DNS, right? If you have cloud deployed DNS in AWS, it doesn't necessarily have knowledge at first of your on-premises DNS environment. And if you have an end user who's doing things in the cloud and they're trying to get resolution of on-premises DNS, or even public DNS, they may not have that access, and they don't have an understanding of why that is. So we can go to the next slide. So what BlueCat's attempting to do is provide our customers with true cloud visibility that syncs with their on-premises environment. We can monitor and manage the cloud provisioning. So as you're provisioning devices, EC2s, VMs in your cloud environment, those should automatically appear in the, to your point, single source of truth of DNS for your entire environment without you as a user having to think about that or do anything. And of course, around that is also, sorry, go back one sec,
Sorry.
Cloud security and then the cloud resolution, right? And so what cloud resolution means is, as a cloud endpoint, if I need to get that resolution from a local DNS server in my cloud environment or in a shared VPC or shared VNet or even on premises, DNS just needs to figure it out. And I, as a user, shouldn't have to think about that. And we really want to remove that complexity from the overall DNS environment. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So we've created workflows, leveraging our gateway platform that Kevin just mentioned, to essentially take the complexity out of cloud as you deploy it, so that you can better support what you're doing on premises and in cloud, and also the transition between the two environments. And so Kevin's going to actually show us now what we're doing right now for kind of cloud discovery.
Yep. So before I jump into that, let me just, do you want to tee it up here a little bit about what we're doing?
Sure,
so,
absolutely.
Go ahead.
Yeah, okay, sure. So, again, we were kind of talking about some of the issues. So disparate DNS on premises, in cloud. We've got no resolution of the cloud resources from an on-premises environment. They have no knowledge by default of what's going on in your cloud environments. We have things like shadow IT, where people are spinning things up and they're not tying it into your overall environment. So, the other thing is you're losing visibility. You don't have the visibility into what people are doing because, again, they maybe didn't ask you, or they're working so fast to spin things up and pull things down that you can't even keep up with that. And so what we've done, and go ahead and go to the next slide, is actually added kind of BlueCat as to our point, single source of truth. So we've centralized the visibility and management of the cloud environment with the on-premises environment. We are unifying the management of those two platforms, and we're also unifying the resolution. So again, as an end user, whether I'm on premises or a device in the cloud environment, I don't have to worry about the DNS resolution. The DNS is going to figure it out for me.
Perfect. So with that, I will jump back over here and walk through this a little bit. So just to kind of tee this one up a little bit, let me jump in here. You'll notice in my configuration here, this is my BlueCat address manager where we house that single source of truth that we were talking about. I currently have a couple configurations in here, the one we were just playing with on the network automation, and then this US West 1, which is a direct correlation to the AWS region for US West 1. And you'll see it in here that those were the only two I have. If I jump over to my AWS environment, I'm going to actually go into US East 1, which is my Ohio region, and take a look at my EC2s, right? So I currently don't have visibility into this in my single source of truth. So if I go out here and look, I don't have any running instances, but you'll notice I've got several different device types running in this East region. All of them are currently stopped, but there's information out there that I'm currently not aware of back on premise, right? So that's the problem with the visibility and the ongoing resolution. As these machines come up and become available, how do we know about that, right? So the first thing we need to do is detection. So to go out and do that detection or that discovery, again, we're going to leverage this BlueCat gateway workflow that we've written to leverage that. So in here you'll see again, I've already imported it in, got it all set up, and the configuration of this is pretty straightforward, and depending on your needs, it's simply going to be a matter of going into AWS, getting your access key, your secret key, again, telling it which regions you want to discover and import from. In this case, I'm going to select the East 2, which we haven't imported yet. We at BlueCat use multi-factor authentication, so I'll have to enter in that ARN information as well. And then I'm doing some other role switching to have the access that I need into there. But then the configuration options, this is where we can go in and again specify, do I want to name it something unique versus the US East 2 region? I'm just going to leave the default there. VPC configuration mode, as we talk about configurations, if you have things like overlapping IP space, or you want to have multiple configurations, whether it be from a kind of a role and scope security aspect where you want different groups or different users to manage different regions in there, you can split it up that way. In this case, I'm gonna leave it unchecked, so I'm gonna have different configurations for each region. The discovery options, this is where we can get specific into what type of information do we want to discover and synchronize in with our single source of truth. So you'll see here,
So this is onboarding. So if I've got a cloud environment that's I've suddenly discovered.
Already out there, yep.
That's already out there. Developers have been off just doing whatever at some random whatever. This allows me to say, okay, I can now bring this into the BlueCat estate, just suck in the data from AWS, and boom, the DNS is
spot on. Yep, absolutely spot on. Yep. So again, if I look in here, I only have US West. I've already imported and set up, but I don't have East in there yet. So I'm going to go
make sure I got it in my.
Yep. But wait, there's more.
But yeah. So again, and this is where I'm going to tell it what do I want it to bring in. In this case, I'm going to bring in all my VPCs, the private address space, the public address space, all of the EC2 instances, the associated DNS records, any elastic load balancers, also the Route 53 DNS information that might be out there, both public and private. And then this is a unique piece here as well, where I'm also going to leverage AWS name tags to create like naming conventions that we can then append to our, in this case, BlueCatLabs.com, which is a target zone or a pseudo domain that we want, for an internal common name instead of something random. Then the last piece down here is the visibility options, and I'll come back to the discovery history once we kick this off. Ongoing, after I kick this off and bring it in, this is where we get the continuous synchronization, where as things are changing after a discovery, we can track that as well. So once those things are in place, I'm going to go ahead and hit discover here. It's going to prompt me for my multi-factor authentication because we are a secure environment here.
Oh, bravo.
71224.
Virtue signaling or what?
And you'll see here, so it's automatically giving me real-time feedback into what it's doing, the EC2 instances, it's discovering all that good information and pulling this stuff in, load balancers, Route 53 DNS, all that fun stuff, and now it's enabling the initializing the ongoing continuous monitoring of it. If I jump back into my BlueCat Address Manager here and refresh, you'll now notice I all of a sudden have a new configuration for East 2. I have all of the public and private IP space for that. I have all of the devices that we were showing you out there and all of the associated AWS metadata with it, right? The type of instance, the name tag that we were talking about, the IP address, both public and private, these are all stopped right now, so I only have the private IPs, the instance state, the availability zone, so on and so forth. All that stuff's out there. What's really nice about this is if I jump back into my US West 1, you'll notice I have one resource out there that I'm going to play with today. If I come over here now and switch back to the West, where
our leadership keeps telling us that it costs money to run these things in AWS.
That's, it's like keep a lot of them stopped here for some reason. So if I go in here and start this instance, one of the nice thing again that you'll see here is, again, it's going to automatically see in that information. So all of a sudden, it's monitoring CloudWatch functions in AWS that is basically monitoring the instance state, and then it's sending SQS messages to the Simple Queue system to say, hey, there's something going on out there. And then our workflow is monitoring those messages to automatically update and synchronize this. So you'll see it starting that Linux util box. It's giving me that information. And once that's done running over there, you'll notice if I come in here and I start trying to dig that, I've got an IP address. If I come over here and look at this instance, I got to refresh. It's going to restart, and now I've got my public IP address, and it's the 109, and there's that matching corresponding address. Again, if I come in here now and stop this instance, lo and behold, it's going to pick up that state change. Things are going through there. Once that's done,
A lot
I
of
will,
this,
I will
if I
be
need to go back
somewhat
and do
patient.
forensic, I can find it later.
What was the
Yes,
question?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Every
people log
transaction.
this. So one of the things that happens is people tear these down, lose the public IP address, and then you're suddenly looking at the logs later and saying, what's this IP address? Because you don't know in AWS.
Well, that's the beauty about it, because the AWS addresses change quite frequently, right? We don't own the IP space in AWS.
Yep.
So again, just to finish that off, if I now dig that record again, it's gone.
Yep.
So I removed that record out of there. So again, if an instance that was out there a minute ago goes away, I can no longer query it, right? We want to clean that stuff up and have
this would avoid
that
the cost of-
referential integrity. Sorry,
This
go
would
ahead.
avoid the cost of. I could probably do some magic in here to avoid the cost of buying static IPs.
Yeah,
Or some
absolutely.
service
For sure,
like you
absolutely.
Could handle it all in the DNS.
Absolutely.
Is it just AWS?
Today, this one's AWS only, but again, we're doing Azure and Google Cloud as well, right? Azure's next up to bat, so to speak, and then Google Cloud will be directly after that.
Okay.
Can I ask a question that's
Yes, please.
just about the UI here? You keep flipping back and forth between two different UIs. One appears to be the admin UI, and then I'm not sure what this is.
Correct.
Can you explain what we're looking at, just so
Yeah,
we have some
absolutely.
context?
So I like to refer, so this is the BlueCat Gateway UI, which is, I like to refer to this as the self-service portal, right? So again, I don't want to give my administrator or my day-to-day users, the help desk guys or service desk guys, or my marketing teams or my other BU users access into my actual address manager to be making changes in there. Not that it can't be done. Role and scope security could definitely be set up to lock those things down, and you can manage all your users and groups through there. It's just a lot easier to give them access just to simple workflow. And in here, I can limit that down. So I could say you're only allowed to have access as, from an AWS perspective to these regions, right? And I could hard code in all of these settings. So say you're only allowed to deal with, the South America East region. I could hard code that out in this workflow so that user that logs in that only has that access, that's all they're going to see. They
They
wouldn't
don't
have
need
the
to
option.
be BlueCat users, they just get a page that's dedicated to what they want.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're DNS customers or consumers, right? Not DNS administrators, and they shouldn't have to be. And that's really the reason for Gateway is
Well, I would disagree. If you're making changes to DNS, you're a DNS administrator. Like you're actively changing the way. I understand you're not affecting the way the system operates at a fundamental level, but you're making changes to the way the DNS is going to respond. You are administrating the system, but you're just giving a limited
That's
administrative.
fair, but it's very limited, right?
Yeah.
It's the ability to spin up records, pull them down or whatever, but they're not going to be able to necessarily change zones. They're not going to be able to spin up or down DNS servers or change the DNS forwarding rules and things like that.
Yep.
That's all the things that we leave in the hands of the actual DNS administrators.
Yeah, and again, the idea behind it is using workflow and automation to eliminate all of this manual entry, right? To go in and manually create all this IP space or to manually create associated records. So when I go in and look at the DNS side of this stuff, and if I'm looking at, for example, my US West, and I've got my internal and external zones, it's gone away because this instance is stopped. If I go in and create this, I might be an AWS guy. I might not have any idea on really how to create a host record for that. So again, the beauty of Gateway doing it for you and me having my limited access, I know I need to be able to query KW Linux util 1, but I don't know how to go create that associated record for that IP address. So why give them the access to do it? Let the API calls go and do that for you. And what it'll do here is once that refreshes, you'll see if it's up and running. It's probably not yet. It's started now. It'll automatically create the corresponding records for it. So if I go in and look at this here, you'll now see down in here that it's got the records, it's got the internal and external associated DNS records with that. And again, if there's any Route 53 stuff, it's also going to build those things out as well. So again, from a DNS admin perspective, you're right. But if you're just a user who's spinning up compute in AWS and you need access to that compute,
I'm also assuming we're seeing a much more robust view because the fact you don't want to have to keep switching out between users. We're seeing a bunch of options on that page because the fact
Exactly.
that you're just trying to show it.
Absolutely,
that
yeah.
Exactly.
Usually someone's going to log in there and they're going to have a very limited scope.
yeah,
Exactly right.
they're literally going to only see, they're not going to see this administration tab and the ability to create workflows and do any of that stuff. So-
Remember, in the cloud, the user is the admin.
I'm sure.
So what's kind of confusing for me too is, so this is the end user portal, right? But now as an admin, you have to go in
He
to a
definitely-
certain part of your workflow in here. So from the actual admin's perspective, this is kind of confusing to me because I still have to go into two different UIs to do my work.
Yes and no, right? So again, this portal is for setting up your DNS infrastructure, like in other words, where are the forwarding statements, who's the master, where are your zones hosted, things of that nature, right? The other one is really for any kind of ancillary configuration automation. So you get in the habit of using that platform for that, and it actually works quite well. The customers that we've shown this to, and we have a couple that are deploying it right now, are ecstatic about this. Just from the visibility perspective, they're saying that this is solving a challenge that they've had for a really long time, especially the point that you made about they've already got all these things. They're already deployed in the cloud. What they lack is the visibility into it. And so being able to bring in a tool that will just automatically do that and then pull it into your DNS infrastructure solves a massive problem for them, even without it pulling it into the DNS infrastructure. Just the visibility, whatever. And then to actually make it available from a DNS perspective as well, it solves a lot of problems for them. So I agree with I understand your point for sure. And it would, there may be a new user interface coming at some point in the future, but at the same time, it's not confusing for the guys who've been using this for a while. They kind of get that this is for the plumbing and this is for the stuff that I need to do to support my business today.
What's actually doing what's actually serving up the DNS queries?
Actual DNS servers.
The actual DNS.
Yeah, BlueCat DNS servers. Yeah.
So for the cloud, where are they being delivered from?
So if you look back in here, right, so let's just take this slide with, again, we took this very high level, but I could have shown a BlueCat DNS server here and a BlueCat, service point and things of that nature. We just simplified it with.
So what you would be running that as in addition in Amazon?
So part of what we do as BlueCat solution architects when we're engaging with customers initially is we sit down, we have conversations with them about how they're consuming services today, how they'd like to do it in the future, what the challenges they have. So we have very large customers who will deploy shared VPCs in different EC2, different regions, where the shared VPC is hosting DNS servers, it's hosting, other services that they need that are common. Sometimes for smaller environments, we'll see a DNS server per VPC. Sometimes environments will actually do direct connections back where they'll use the on-premises DNS. So it really depends on the customer, what their appetite is for consuming the services, what their budget looks like. So there's a lot of different variables. I hate to give you an it depends answer, but it depends. But we have the ability to deploy all these services physically, virtually, or in the cloud.
Okay, so it's just a design.
Exactly. It's
upfront.
exactly.
Kind of goes back to the bubbles that Patricia was showing earlier, right? There's no one way to do DNS. So.
Yep.